Was Elizabeth Warren the first woman of color to be hired to Harvard Law School in 1995? Politico reports that according to a 1997 piece in the Fordham Law Review, the current candidate for Senate in Massachusetts, who has Native American roots, was touted by the school as part of an effort to increase diversity among faculty. The piece reflects similar statements in an article in the Harvard Crimson from a year before that describes the professor-turned-consumer advocate as a Native American. That has some suggesting that Warren's hiring wasn't all about merit.
No fair-minded person I know doubts your sincerity when you say that I believe it's great-great or great, whatever it is, great-great-grandmother was a Native American. But based on what you've learned in the last couple of months in this endless back and forth, isn't it possible you were wrong about this?
Actually, you have it wrong about what it is I believe. Let's start there.
Tell us what we believe.
Okay, my mom and dad were very much in love with each other, and they wanted to get married. And my father's parents said, absolutely not. You can't marry her because she's part Cherokee and she's part Delaware. And after fighting it as long as they could, my parents went off, they eloped. It was an issue in our family the whole time I grew up about these two families. It was an issue still raised at my mother's funeral. So what I know about my parents is I know that in that little town they grew up in, that my father's parents knew enough about my mother and her family.
So you have no doubt?
To say I have no doubt.
Well, let's assume then that that's the fact, that you're 1/32nd.
No, that doesn't tell you. Don't do that.
Well, why shouldn't I do that? But that is the fact,
no,
is it not?
No, it is not.
Why not?
It's not about the number. There are lots of people who
Forget
are not
number.
enrolled in tribes.
Forget the number. You have acknowledged that in that National Law Directory, you listed yourself as a minority. If your family heritage had an African American, like you have that grandparent or great-great-grandparent was a Cherokee, would you call yourself a black and expect African Americans to accept that?
You mean if
that
my
same,
father's, well, let me think about this.
If that same ancestor was black and not a Cherokee.
It's not that ancestor. It's if my father's parents had said, you can't marry her because she's black, and that had been part of our family growing up, that we had two different families.
You would be comfortable saying you're black?
It would be part of identification.
Scott Brown has said that, Scott Brown, and I put words in his mouth, I don't think I am, that he suggests you may have received unfair advantage at Harvard and other, well, let me just finish if I can. You've denied it. Every single person involved in the hiring process, whom I've heard, has denied it as well. Why don't you go the extra step that he's asked and essentially shut up all the critics, release the personnel records, no, I'm serious, which would essentially, I assume, if you're accurate, right about them, would end the discussion point blank there, would it not?
No, the discussions ended when the people who hired me explained what happened. And let's remember who it is. It's Charles Freed, Solicitor General of the United States under Ronald Reagan, appointed by William Weld to the Supreme Judicial Court, and somebody who said in print long ago that he voted for Scott Brown. He's the one who did the hiring. That's not what the personnel records are about. The hiring is what Charles Freed led and the faculty voted. And Charles Freed has put it out there about as strongly as could humanly possible.
But would you not agree that Scott Brown and your critics would be in a really tough spot if you released the personnel records and they showed nothing about Native American heritage?
Personnel records don't show hiring. That's the point. The question is about hiring, and the question about hiring has been answered, unless you think that Charles Freed is not telling the truth.
Speaking of Charles Freed, you do think, even though you've said repeatedly you have nothing to apologize for, I assume you agree that Harvard has something to apologize for at least to me. What they decided to do was use you to quell the concerns about minority professors at the law school. I mean, that is a fair and accurate statement, is it not, Elizabeth Warren?
I have not hidden who I am, and I'm not going to change.
This weekend, a clip resurfaced of Warren claiming that her parents had to elope because she was part Cherokee, her mother was part Cherokee and part Delaware. It's a touching story, which is also not true. An internet sleuth in 2012 found records from the 1930s indicating that Warren's parents had their marriage conducted by a prominent pastor in the town, that the witness on her parents' marriage certificate was a family friend, that the wedding announcement in the local paper makes zero mention of the wedding being a surprise to their family. This is not just the run-of-the-mill lying about one's heritage for gain. This is the belief to the bone and an utter refusal when confronted with the facts to grapple with reality. Warren's delusions ran so deep, she once claimed to be Cherokee to submit a recipe to a cookbook called Pow Wow Chow. Yes, Really, even better, she plagiarized the recipe that she supported from the New York Times.
I will give you $1 million to your favorite charity, paid for by Trump, if you take the test and it shows you're an Indian, you know.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Warren. Is Dr. Bustamante in, please?
Hi, I'm Carlos Bustamante, and I've advised companies in the direct-to-consumer space, including Ancestry.com, 23andMe, and Helix. In the Senator's genome, we did find 5 segments of Native American ancestry with very high confidence, where we believe the error rate is less than 1 in 1,000.
Now, the president likes to call my mom a liar. What do the facts say?
The facts suggest that you
absolutely have a Native American ancestor in your pedigree.
Tonight, the leaders of the Cherokee Nation are speaking out against Senator Elizabeth Warren's campaign video touting her Native American ancestry courtesy of a newly revealed DNA test. The tribe saying in part, quote, "A DNA test is useless to determine tribal citizenship."
I am not a tribal citizen. I had a good conversation last week with Chief Baker, who is chief of the Cherokee tribes, and I told Chief Baker that I am sorry that I extended confusion about tribal citizenship and tribal sovereignty.
So, Senator, why did you list yourself as an American Indian on this Texas bar application?
When I was growing up in Oklahoma, I learned about my family the same way most people do. My brothers and I learned from our mom and our dad and our brothers and our sisters, and those were our family stories. But that said, there really is an important distinction of tribal citizenship. I am not a member of a tribe.
Elizabeth Warren hasn't even officially announced that she's running yet for president, but she's already dealing with a revelation that could throw it in jeopardy. This document will show you. The Washington Post is reporting that Elizabeth Warren listed her race on the document as American Indian when registering for the Texas bar back in 1986. This wasn't checking a box, as you see there. This was her handwriting, in her own words, on that form. Just last week, Senator Warren apologized to Cherokee Nation for claiming Native American heritage in the past, and now she's being forced to explain and apologize again. Her spokeswoman saying this: as Senator Warren has said, she is not a citizen of any tribe, and only tribes determine tribal citizenship. She is sorry that she was not more mindful of this earlier in her career.
As well.
Yeah.
So what, your family told you you were Native American?
Yeah.
Charlamagne tells me I'm Dominican, but I don't believe him.
You are. How long did you hold on to that? Because there was some report that said you were Native American on your Texas bar license, and that you said you were Native American on some documents when you were a professor at Harvard. Like, why'd you do that?
So it's what I believe. You know, that's, like I said, it's what I learned from my family.
When did you find out you weren't?
Well, you know, I'm not a person of color. I'm not a citizen of a tribe. And tribal citizenship is an important distinction, and not something I am. So.
Was there any benefits to that?
No. Boston Globe did a full investigation. It never affected, nothing about my family ever affected any job I ever got.
Mm-hmm. She didn't get a discount in college? No.
You kind of like the original Rachel Dolezal a little bit. Rachel Dolezal was a white woman pretending to be black.
No, this is what I learned from my family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren has been caught making things up again about her past, this time by the enterprising Tommy Christopher over at Mediaite. Warren frequently makes reference on the campaign trail and in public to an alleged incident where she was dismissed as a teacher for being visibly pregnant. Let's take a listen.
So my first teaching position was as a special needs teacher. There we go. I loved that job. But by the end of the first school year, I was quite visibly pregnant, and the principal didn't invite me back for the next school year.
The problem, as with many things about Elizabeth Warren, is that is a version of events meant to tug at the heartstrings is not what she was saying back in 2007. During an interview with then For Conversations with History, Warren said she decided to abandon her calling as a teacher because she lacked the proper credentials to qualify for a permanent position. Listen in her own words.
It was in a public school system, but I worked with the children with disabilities. And I did that for a year. And then that summer, I actually didn't have the education courses, so I was on an emergency certificate, it was called. And I went back to graduate school and took a couple of courses in education and said, I don't think this is going to work out for me.
There it is, plain as day. Some of Warren's defenders said it wasn't technically a lie because pregnancy may still have been one of the reasons she was dismissed. It's hard to find credulity in that idea, however, given that she said very clearly she left of her own accord and wasn't pressured out.
I still have a picture on my mantle at home, and it's a picture my mother had before that, a picture of my grandfather. And my Aunt Bee has walked by that picture at least 1,000 times, remarked that her father, my papa, had high cheekbones like all of the Indians do, because that's how she saw it. And she said, and your mother got those same great cheekbones, and I didn't. She thought this was the bad deal she had gotten in life. Being Native American has been part of my story, I guess, since the day I was born.